25 years to the day, nearly, since British Rail was privatised. If Labour wins the next election, they'll go back to being nationalised again. And then what? Well, figures released this morning spell out what privatisation has cost, both in terms of passengers and taxpayers. And Andy McDonald is the Labour Shadow Transport Secretary. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And the fact is, the railways are better now than they were 25 years ago, aren't they?
Oh, certainly not, John. They're
Really?
in an appalling state.
What, more people travelling than ever before?
In overcrowded trains.
But they want to travel.
Crisis. John, the experience of people on rail is a bad one. And this is as a result of, notwithstanding a trebling of the public investment in the railway, an appalling service that comes out of it. And you're seeing those fares that people are paying, 238% increases since privatisation.
Well, you're being a wee bit selective there, aren't you, really?
Well, I'm not being selective at all. Those are actual figures from...
You can travel cheaply if you really want to. Peak fares have gone up, that is for sure. But if you want to find cheap fares, you can, can't you?
And those people who are travelling and paying £4,500 for a season ticket, and sometimes, well, certainly never getting a seat, but often their trains being cancelled or even missing their stations.
But you couldn't do anything about that, could you? I mean, if you nationalise it.
Well, what we want to see is a railway that's going to serve making our economies vibrant and our communities thriving, and that's not what's happening under this
so what would you
regime. Do? Well, our plan is to bring the track and train together in an arm's length company in public ownership, but which is a devolved railway, so the nations and regions of Great Britain can be responsible for running the railways within their regions.
So if we wanted to complain, we'd have to complain to a politician in future?
Oh, absolutely not. I'm removing the politics. Chris Grayling's made an absolute mess of trying to outsource accountability and privatise responsibility, and he's not done any of those things successfully. And what I'm saying is that the railway should work out with the direct management of politicians and be run by professionals at an arm's length.
But in the end, you'd accept, wouldn't you, that it comes down to investment? And the fact is that private companies, between 2017 and 18, this last year, invested $1.3 billion in the network, and that is the highest figure since records began.
The degree to which the private companies have put investment in the railway is minuscule and is dwarfed by the public sector investment in the railways. Had British Rail had a fraction of that investment, we would have had a gold-plated railway by now. And what we've had is a very expensive, wasteful system that's not only costly to engineer in the first instance with the failed franchising system, sees dividends and profits leaking out of the other end to state-owned railways across mainland Europe.
Well, except if you listen to what Michael Holden had to say, and he's a very respected, I think, executive. He was called in to run the government's directly operated railways when the East Coast Main Line went bad in 2007, and he told us, told Dominic O'Connell, in fact, you were always competing for money with education and health in the old days of British Rail. The end result was we never had enough money.
Well, he's absolutely right about the old days of British Rail. They had to survive on yearly settlements, and one of the things that we work under now is control periods of 5-year settlements. And what we're saying is that the rail industry, and certainly the supply chain, needs to have a sight of long-term investment, and that's why we're looking at extending those control periods from 5 years to 7 years, so people can plan, they can invest in their materials, but also their people. And we've got to ensure that we've got a pipeline of projects and people coming forward to bring about those improvements in our railway, and that's exactly what Labour will do.